So, welcome to the first ever episode of Visual Podcast, a spin off project of the Visual Conference series where we're going to be focusing on developer issues, things that visual novel developers are going to be interested in. And today I've invited a good friend of mine, Chris, from Sekai Project, who is the CEO and essentially the head of licensing. And today we're going to be talking about licensing, what it is, what can it do for you, and, okay, so thank you, Chris, for letting me bully you into doing this test run with me.
Well, thank you, Randy, for having me on for your inaugural show. And I look forward to this, and let's have a great discussion.
Yep, so Sekai Project is a publisher. We make games, or, well, not really make them. I'm going to edit this out. Hey, we get games from people who make them, and we help publish them. What does that mean? Like, what does that even mean, like, to be a publisher, in your view?
It's a pretty open-ended concept when you really get down to it, what really is the purpose of the publisher. But, to kind of go back to, I guess, discussing what is the purpose or the aim of Sekai Project. When we first started this business, and I always like to regale people with the tales of how our mission statement in the beginning contained one very important clause, which was, no matter what you do not get into games. It is a very poor decision. But, we thought about doing book publishing and some other, music CDs and different types of media. And yet we always danced around the idea of doing games. And lo and behold, about a year or so after our founding, games was basically the name of the game, so to speak. No pun intended. But
I remember those days.
Yeah, no, it's kind of funny how things kind of come full circle in a sense. But publishing for us really is the core of it, is trying to find really not like the first part is finding, all the great titles that, have always kind of been spoken to almost like in legend. It's like, oh, it would be great if somebody could localize this or that or some other game. And that's, that was really the core focus in the beginning. But the secondary, and perhaps, now our true main focus, I think, is to not just find the legendary games, but also to kind of seek out, like the diamond in the rough, the games that you realize that, they would actually, people overseas or people like in our core audience in the West would actually appreciate. And it's, have the fun is just kind of seeking out some of these titles, because oftentimes when you talk to developers, you never know what you're going to end up getting into. If you have a developer that's already established, your Visual Arts or your Type Moon or your Aqua Plus of the world, then you're kind of like, okay, I know what they do, I know what I want. But then when you end up going to, say, a smaller indie event, you go to, Comic Market or Comedia or some of these events, it's kind of like, oh, I wonder what I'll see. And, the discovery is kind of half the fun. And I think with publishing, that is a big part of it, just kind of finding things that you find entertaining that you feel, hey, I think our audience is going to like this too, and just kind of doing your best to bring those things, to the front, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times when I look at what we do, it's you've said this in meetings and things, right? Like, our job is to find people who do good stuff, good work, and that deserve more people to know about, and we help bring them to those people, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right. Well, so, as a developer, what does publishing get me? Like, if I'm new, I made my first game or something, and I'm trying to answer the question, okay, should I get a publisher? Do I need a publisher? What do you feel about that?
I think, not to toot our horn either, but it really does depend on the scope and, I guess, the expectations of the developers. I feel that nowadays, especially just how it is to be able to, self-publish and to put your game on, a variety of different platforms out on the internet, I think for starters, now's never been a better time to be a developer. Absolutely. But it depends on the scope. If you just want to kind of put your game out there, do your thing and call it a day. I mean, self-publishing, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I think it's when you seek out probably, say, for instance, access to different markets that may not be possible if you do it yourself. Like if you want to reach out to a publisher in order to get access to like, foreign markets, you maybe you don't have the budget to, translate your game into other languages. And, you can talk to a publisher like, can we get support to put this in another language? Maybe we want to, you have a developer in the West that, wants to model off of Japanese games. They want to get their game translated to Japanese, not so much for the Japanese market, but you want to get, Japanese voice acting on there because it fits with your model. You don't have the connections to do that. You really do seek out the publisher because you want to be able to broaden your horizons, to have access to more things than you thought were possible. Another thing you may want to seek a publisher for is financial support. Say you have a fantastic game concept that's, partially off the ground, but, the people you're working with, everybody's doing this as kind of a part-time endeavor because it's a big risk to drop everything you're doing. Just say, I want to make games. I applaud anybody that does that, but I can imagine it's no easy task. So, when you are in a situation like that and you realize you need funding to maybe outsource some of the work to lighten the load or just need access to other, assets that you cannot normally get, those are the times where you would want to seek out a publisher. My personal opinion anyway.
Yeah, there are lots of things that a small developer would like to do or want to do, but might not know who to do it. Like, that's part of the reason why I set up Visual Conference, was because it's like you hear people constantly asking about what's the best way to get voice acting, or, should I even have contracts or stuff, right? And like these are all questions that other people have dealt with or want to deal with, and the more you're in touch with developers, the more you know about it, right?
Mm-hmm. No, you're absolutely right about that.
And so, you can totally get this through a publisher, because the publisher has to talk to multiple developers, so they have some of those connections, and of course conferences, and certainly just like shouting into Twitter can yield quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think, the necessity for a publisher is very similar to other types of industries as well. I think about, for example, the most common thing I think that a lot of people, especially in the U.S., can commiserate with is, we are in the beginning of February right now, 2018. But, when we get closer to April, that means it's tax season. And for the most part, I think the average person, tax-paying individual, is probably able to, go online, find, the taxpayer software of the week and, pay your price and be able to, do what you need to do to get your taxes filed. But sometimes, you actually need to seek out somebody else, maybe like a brick or mortar tax accountant, go to like, H&R Block or something like that to get your taxes done, because, you have something more complicated, or you have the person who probably knows it all and just realizes, well, you know what, the software and the people, they're just helping me to fill out these forms. If I just print these forms out and fill them out myself, I save like all that money. I don't worry about the time. So it's basically that, right? So yeah. A lot of the use of these kind of, I guess you can call this kind of service industry, is really based off of, do you need that assistance? And for some people, again, you don't. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But in other cases, maybe you want to seek out that assistance. And maybe you want, beyond just assistance, you want other stuff as well. So that's really the way to look at it, I think.
Yeah, that's true. There is definitely, it's easier to self-serve these days, but sometimes God knows that I don't want to do accounting. I can if I have to, but I certainly don't enjoy it in my life.
I think that's the right way of looking at it.
Hey, that's why I gladly pay an accountant to deal with all the nonsense I have to deal with being an adult.
No, I agree.
Okay. Let's see. I had some other questions. What was it? All right. So we talked about what a developer could potentially get out of a deal with a publisher, but obviously the publisher isn't working for free. So what do they get out of it?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, the main goal of the publisher, is you're running a business, you want to make money. And so if you're not, even if you're developing games, it's like what publishers get out of it, I mean, for a lot that's offered on the table is, you get access to the rights to sell, a particular title that you feel that very strongly about, and from there, you're able to kind of build a network as well. It's like you build a good rapport with the developer. You take care of their affairs, sell their game is a success. And you end up building that connection, fostering that connection so that, if they have another title in the future, they have somebody to turn to. And I think that's really part of it because, in the beginning when we first started this company, it's very difficult to say, especially approach a Japanese developer when you have nothing done and you're just kind of like, hey, yeah, I'm a new developer. Well, let me license your games. And it's kind of like you have no track record. Nobody knows who you are. And, your name has not been established, especially in a kind of very closed off society like Japan, where you kind of have you got to have that rapport with other groups, especially in the same industry. It's very difficult to take this business off the ground. But by making these connections with these developers, wherever they are, and just keep building upon that portfolio. You show the world that's like, what, you're doing some great stuff, you're working with some great people, and that kind of those good feelings, that goodwill pays off as well. I think that's a very important factor, if nothing else, especially for us at Sekai Project, to seek out, new developers and just kind of create these new relations wherever we can.
Yeah, and I certainly also get paid a certain percent of the sales, though it varies quite a bit.
That's the basic part of it. Absolutely.
At the end of the day, we sell stuff, right? So we get a cut of the sales, less than actually a lot of people. I've seen numbers of people throw around the internet. I'm like, no, we don't get that.
There are some impressive numbers out there, but it's a little bit different for us, I would say. Compared to the regular game industry itself as a whole, I think our rates are definitely much lower than the average.
Yeah, the games industry has a very peculiar margin set up either way, so it's hard to say where we sit in that. We're definitely not making the most money, and we're definitely not making the least, but who knows where we are in the
yeah.
Oh well. Okay, so let's say I'm a developer and I want to get published for whatever reason, right? Let's say either I need money or I already have a completed demo and I just said I just need distribution, right? Whatever. So how do I get published, whether from Sekai Project or any of the competitors that are out there?
Well, I think the first and foremost, you need to have first you have to know who to contact. From prospective publishers. Then after you have that kind of connection point, then you have to basically create the most common thing, especially for games, they call it the GDD, which is a game development document, and basically kind of runs down exactly what the game's about, like general numbers, like it's this long development, we expect it to sell for this price, it's this long, it's for these platforms, and general gist, a summary of the game, this and that, and the other thing. So you will want to present a GDD, and then, if you can, presenting a demo, that's also fantastic, one or the other. And just, I think honestly, you just need to approach the publishers like, hey, I got this fantastic game idea. This is what I got off the ground. Let me know what you think. And, when you have events such as GDC, the Game Developer Conference up in San Francisco, which is coming up next month, places like that or other events, TwitchCon or, the PAX events, anime cons, whatever it may be. Those are, I think, excellent opportunities to be able to have a face-to-face with the publisher to kind of pick their ear and see if you have something to offer that they'll actually be interested in. Absolutely, just sending an email is fine too, but I feel in a lot of cases the face-to-face conversation with a developer, or in this case with a publisher, goes a lot longer than just an email, if nothing else.
All right. So you talked about this GDD, and I've seen templates for them. They've gone they're really detailed to very vague. It really varies place to place. I know the Sekai Project GDD is kind of in the middle. We don't ask for a lot of things like business model or whatever, right? Like some GDDs I've seen ask for that. But so, a GDD comes to you, but what are you actually looking for, right? You've been in charge of licensing for a lot of our titles for a long time now. So what catches your eye, or what says like, hey, this is not a fit for us. This is not something we do. I'm sorry. And you let that go.
This one is a very, very tricky question because I look at some of the titles that I have personally licensed in the past few years, and I mean, I will stand by the fact that, I think we pick up some wonderful games, but perhaps once they go to market, the numbers aren't really within expectation. I mean, unfortunately, market forces are always kind of difficult to predict, especially when you're dealing specifically with the narrow genre of visual novels, especially since, you think about Steam. The proliferation of visual novels has definitely increased by several magnitudes, I feel, since you look back to the early days when companies like Manga Gamer, they put out like Gogo Nippon. I think that's probably one of the, I'm sure there were others before them, but I feel that was the most distinct at the time, like visual novel that came on the scene for Steam. And on the side of just plain indie games, you can always look towards games like Suguri, which was put out by unfortunately I forgot the name of the company, but you have games like that, and Rock and Android. That's right. Apologize to those guys; they're great people. You have like Suguri from like Rock and Android, and you also have probably the most famous, I feel, is from the Carpe Folger folks, which is Reciteer, and that's kind of like the first instance where it's kind of like, wow, indie games from Japan, like what a concept. And from those days, I mean, really, you jump onto Steam and you look at, if you have any record experience, history of buying or looking at visual novels, the curators, the way it works, kind of like Amazon, they'll start like pushing these games out in front of you. So it's like never been a better time to be a visual novel fan because there's so much out there. But going back to your earlier question, Randy, like what is it that we look for? I think you always have to look at several factors. The first part, and this is not to sound shallow, but this has always been the nature of the gaming business and probably other industries for the longest time. It's the artwork. The artwork is a very important thing that we do look at. I mean, naturally, there are plenty of games out there, especially in Japan, where the artwork is fantastic. It's gorgeous. Love the designs, but the game has no substance and nothing goes beyond it.
I can think of so many.
So many. I mean, I know you're a big fan of a lot of visual novels, Bishoujo games and stuff like that. I mean, I'm not as knowledgeable, but there's a lot of artists I love to follow, and just kind of like, I love their artwork. Why are they working on these games that'll fail? It's just it's an unfortunate reality, perhaps.
I mean, it's like the old, way back in the mid 2000s. There was like in Japan, there was a joke about the old the Carnelian curse. Any game that has Carnelian be the main artist, usually the game is pretty horrible.
It's too bad because I love her artwork, just fantastic, gorgeous stuff. But nevertheless, artwork is very important because now, yes, the importance of, say, packaging artwork in that sense is diminished because the average person, I feel these days, great majority of gamers probably, I think they just buy digitally. I mean, that's just kind of the reality, is the simplicity. It's like, one-touch purchasing on Amazon. It's just, we want to look for the easiest way to get what we need to get and the fastest way as possible. Now, there are people like me who are collectors who prefer a physical copy, but, it is what it is. But nevertheless, back in the day, stores would, they would prioritize games that had fantastic artwork because even if the game technically was bad, if you could draw people into your local Babbage's and get them to drop down at $59.99 for that new Nintendo game or something like that, I'm dating myself highly right now.
I'm from that same time. Once once you buy that box off the shelf, you bought the box off the shelf. You're not going to take it back and return it.
Yeah. It's a done deal. So, that's how it was back then. And you could say maybe it's diminished now for digital, but the thing is, showing off, the artwork, it's still important, I think, for the digital sales, just so you can draw people in. So, artwork is definitely a foremost important thing. I think the second thing really, again, it goes with tandem is, you have to really bring me a compelling story. But here's the thing about story also. We have, had the honor of, checking out a lot of very, very interesting proposals, titles that maybe have a lot of historical significance or, just something that, you think about. But the thing is, especially with the medium of visual novels, is, there are expectations, I guess, of what you expect to see in these kind of games. And, look, if you craft a fantastic story that talks about the Song Dynasty and how it's this, you created an otome game out of it or something like that. I mean, that sounds fantastic. Absolutely. But sometimes with the subject material, if it doesn't draw people in, no matter how interesting it is on the outside, it just doesn't work. I think it's very unfortunate. It's kind of like certain genres where it's like, actually, I think the one example I think about all the time is looking like the Mega Man games. For I think a lot of people, growing up playing them from the Nintendo, the Super Nintendo, it's like, when you get down to it, it's the same thing over and over again. I mean, put in that perspective, I love those games. But,
it because it's the same thing over and over again, specifically, right?
Yeah. But here's the thing. So when Capcom tries to do something different, it's kind of like, whoa, slow down. Why are you changing what already works? If it ain't broke, don't try to fix it. And you get this contradiction. I thought you wanted us to do something different. It's like, no, we didn't. Go back to the old stuff. And kind of here we are now, kind of a feeling. So when people say, with Bishoujo games, it's always like, Gakuenmo, they call it, basically the school setting. Oh, this game's a school love comedy, et cetera, or it's a school comedy, or it's just school romance. There's no comedy in it. And you're just like, we have like 500 of these games. We're not going to do any more. But then people are still asking for them. So it's like, okay, which one is it? Do you want this or you want that? So...
I mean, oftentimes it's not the same people screaming, right? The problem is we don't have a good sense of who the populations of those two camps.
Yeah. I mean, no, you're absolutely right about that. And the thing is, I think one of the important things I want to also impart about what we do in our company, like I said, there are some games that we decided to pick up that, they did not sell like crazy number of units, whatever like that. I would not look at that as a failure, because the way I look at it also is, there are titles where, we want to take a chance on, or we just find it to be fantastically interesting. Like, look, if you actually present something that's interesting, it may not be, the game of the year visual novel we're looking for or whatever type of game, I think we'd still consider it, because, if it's interesting enough and warrants exploration, then, we'll go for it. And there are a number of titles where I say, it was worth trying. And that's kind of how it is. So but, going back to, we're kind of deviating a little bit here, but artwork is definitely the most important thing, because you want to get my attention. And right. Much like somebody reading resumes, I'm not saying I have a short attention span, but there's only so much time in the day. And it's just kind of like, if you want to get my attention, show me something that looks gorgeous. But at the same time, you got to show me something that's gorgeous and consistent. Because oftentimes, and this is the same thing with comics as well, you have a fantastic cover, and the inside it's just not
classic,
good. It's not par.
That classic Dojin comic thing that happens where the all the energy is put into that cover, and then the inside's like, oh.
Or even better, you find out the main artist that you want did the cover, didn't do the inside.
Oh yeah, I've seen those too, and there have been games like that too, where the headlining artist did like 2 CGs.
Yeah,
definitely a thing.
It's like, you gotta bring your A game. That's very important.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I get the art thing, because it's like expresses the most things. It's really hard to sell a story. Like, you can, just try describing how awesome a game's story is to someone, and you have to essentially say like this gigantic long essay, right, to make a convincing argument. No one has that kind of time to read that. I mean, I don't read Steam descriptions. I'm fairly sure most people don't. They look at the screenshots and the gameplay video. It's hard. It's a lot harder. But okay, so we have art, we have story. You guys are willing, and then you said you were willing to take risks on games that obviously may not be a runaway hit, but I assume, if they come close to breaking even, I assume that's good enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, again, it's just, I think it's a case by case thing, because unfortunately, there have been many projects we've turned down that had merit, but just circumstantially, maybe the financing that they're looking for, we just couldn't justify. So those things do happen, but other factors, I would say, especially since the purpose of this is to talk more about visual novels, but the one thing I personally, as a fan of this genre, just of simulation games, Bishoujo games, stuff like that, I'm always a fan of, say, the Alicesoft games, where you have a lot of them that have fantastic levels of gameplay. Like, you tell me, I got this great idea for a visual novel. It has an RPG component. I'm just like, oh wow, now you're speaking my language. Tell me more. It's kind of like when we picked up Baldur's Sky. It's just you have just not only the VN component, but you have a fantastic action shoot 'em up kind of game as well. So it's just kind of like, if you also try to offer something beyond the expectation in that sense, like the gameplay is a very big factor. Like, you have something like that, and you can demonstrate it. That's also the other thing, because you can tell me about it, but if you're not demonstrating to me, it's I don't want my expectations to be shot here. It's like, you're gonna show me something, then please show me.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So compelling gameplay elements, if you can do it. If you can't pull it off, a shoddy game is probably worse than no game at all, I would assume. Okay. So you mentioned, like, there have been times where you have to, like, say no to people, not just because, like, sometimes you just get a bad GDD. They have no idea what they're doing. But
yeah,
they're just, so you mentioned, like, sometimes there's just no finance, like, the financing isn't there. Like, they want too much money, I assume. Like, they need, I don't know, $20,000 to do their project, and we just don't have that budget. That's that what it is?
The way to look at it, it's not so much, it's like, that we have a bit of a pinch. It's just, it's kind of a bit of a company policy that we allocate a certain amount of money every year specifically for funding. So there are times where, unfortunately, if the allocation has been exceeded before some of these projects have come to fruition, then, unless it's like, basically, when you have a situation like that, it becomes much more difficult for us to actually greenlight some of these things. So, I mean, it sounds kind of bad, but sometimes, it's almost like first come, first serve. It's like, say our allocation from 2017, the allocation is paid out, and these games are all out in the market, then, basically that reallocation, like, gets refilled, and we kind of start the period again. We don't have a clear-cut system just yet, but probably something we're going to be doing down the line is we may just have a period of time during a year in particular where it's like, okay, this is our, like, 4-month window of acquisitions. Like, basically, if you hit us up during this time, you have the ability to be eligible for some of this funding kind of a thing. Kind of like professional sports, like, where you have not so much a draft, but you have trades happen. It's very specific periods of time. So it's kind of like you hit us up during the period. That's when stuff happens. So that might be something we'll do in the future, just so it's a little more clear cut when we're going to be picking up tiles and when we're going to say, okay, you know what, we're going to stop. We're done for the year. So it's something that I'm kind of banding around right now, just to see what works out.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth a try. I wonder how that would go. You can argue it both ways, right? I can see it being like, it's better to be like, hey, if we see a diamond in the rough, we should just grab it no matter when it comes, assuming we have money. But there's also just like, yeah, this is, let's say Q2 of every year this happens, and that's the period, so everyone knows to get their stuff ready for then. I don't know.
Because I think you kind of need a bit of, like, again, it's like, I think a set system is probably a good way, because it also gets people, like, if they're really serious about this, it gets them to do their homework and make sure that, their presentation looks good and you get yourself ready. I think that's important. But at the same time, again, yeah, you're right. If you find something that just, you're like, oh, my allocation is complete for the year, but it's like you just see something that just looks absolutely dazzling. It's like, oh, you gotta, you think you got a winner there. You make exceptions. And I think, a tandem system where you allow for exceptions is probably going to be a good way of doing it. I mean, we want to try to be as fair as possible. I mean, there's always some suggestion that maybe, we pay more attention to these developers over those developers. We pay more attention to Japan or stuff like that. And I think I want to just, kind of assuage those worries and concerns. You know, say it's like, it's not so much, we're focused on one thing or the other. Sometimes it's just, it's just the timing and the circumstances. So trying to find a way that I guess is fair for everybody might be a good way of looking at it. It's hard to say. It's a tricky thing. It's not like, I mean, we don't get, inquiries every day, but, there are times where just suddenly just a lot of people hitting us up and we're just like, we're really flattered that a lot of people want to work with us, and just kind of like trying to see how we can be as accommodating as possible to people.
Is there ever, like, so have you noticed like a pattern of when people come rush at you guys for funding or projects, like, or is it just kind of like it just happens because on some random Tuesday it's that day.
Yeah, right now we can say it's random. It's mostly because I literally just thought about that right now. It's just like, it would be interesting to just kind of aggregate all the, especially all the support tickets that are licensing inquiries and just kind of like map it out. So, I mean, I'm sure we can find some patterns, possibly. But at this moment, because we don't have that kind of data to look at, I would say, it just kind of happens. And I guess the one thing I could say is, it's grown a lot more over the last few years. I mean, I could say our initial first couple of years, maybe one in an entire year might have hit us up, kind of a thing.
That's cool. Well, maybe someone's having a game jam or something out there and we don't know about it, but suddenly people have things. Who knows?
Well, I mean, I would also like to let people know, even though I guess I have to technically state this off the record, that if you want to get my attention, if your game involves girls in glasses, I'm always game.
Hey! I thought like we agreed a long time ago that we need to get a game, like a glasses game out.
We need more.
Yeah. Well, what happened to Sentaro? Like, why can't we do a thing with him?
Let's talk about that privately. I think we've got something there.
That and plus, the Neko artist also was like, he was lamenting that he had a character design that used glasses, but the glasses were shot down. So I'm like, we can use him too.
Just saying. That is tragic right there. Absolutely tragic.
I know. So, okay. Yeah, definitely glasses. I can get aboard with that. All right. Let's see. To recollect my thoughts here, but okay, so we wandered a bit afield about games and what the process is. So let's say I submit a GDD to you guys. Like, is there a thing I should be like? It's going to get evaluated. I'm going to hear something. It's kind of like interviewing. Is there anything I should be expecting, not like, or should not be surprised at? Like, what's the deal there?
I think in most cases, if somebody submits a GDD to us, especially through our support ticket system, we do our best to basically answer all those inquiries as much as frequently as possible. So at the very least, if we don't feel it's a fit for us, I mean, you can expect us to at least respond back and let you know that we kind of we are not interested. I mean, I know there are a lot of people that think, what did I do wrong? What can I do better?
Right.
And it's probably something in the future that we will definitely also try to be a little bit more informative, because the thing is, even if we turn you down, it doesn't mean like the game's not gonna, it's not a good game. It's like what you present is not good. It could just be, you're presenting us a game that, it does not really fit within the market that we are catering towards. And I don't want anybody to ever think that, my career as a game developer is over. Got to go back to my day job. It's like, no, absolutely not. I just think that, again, sometimes there are clear reasons. Other times it is really circumstantial. But probably moving forward in the future, we'll try to be a little bit more, show more clarity as to the decisions that are made. But oftentimes it can be difficult. It's just kind of like, it's just, you don't get the right feel out of it. I mean, sometimes it really is kind of a gut feeling when we decide to take a risk or to not take a risk.
Yeah, I mean, it could be just like, if someone came to us with the next Call of Duty first-person shooter, we can look at this and go, this is amazing, but we are not the right people for this, right? Like, the people who buy and pay attention to us and buy from Sekai Project, just they're not looking at us to provide the next first-person shooter thing. It's just go to Activision. They'll handle you so much better.
Yeah, I mean, the thing, because that's the thing, right? It's like, even if it's like, that's what I say, it's like, never feel that, we turned you down because we didn't think the game was good. There are times where, we may honestly, unfortunately, just feel it's like, what, we cannot serve you well enough because it's outside the scope of what we do. And, those times, I mean, they do happen. It's unfortunate, but that's why I think I want to, again, heavily emphasize that, never feel discouraged if you get turned down, whether it's us or another company. Take it in stride. Think about what you want to do, and just kind of make improvements that you need to do, or consider again the road of self-publishing, and just see where things go from there. I mean, sky's the limit, honestly. I just want people to not feel like a drop in morale just because we said, no, we're not interested.
Yeah, I mean, you hear this in the book publishing world all the time, right? How very good authors will can wallpaper their entire room with the rejection letters for the same book before that becomes like a bestseller. And that's just how publishing is.
Yeah.
And they've been around a lot longer, and they have a lot more choices. So, yeah. All right. So, any other like crazy stories or things that you want to like just talk about if you think it's fun? I don't know. You're head of licensing. Do you have anything fun for people who are listening?
Well, in terms of stories, I think
within the scope of NDAs.
Yeah, there's that too. But also, since this is going to be hopefully the first in a long series of podcasts and stuff like that, I don't think I'll let all the stuff out just yet. But I think let's go with actually a couple things. So when this company was first founded back in 2013, myself and Raymond, my partner in Sekai Project, we went to Japan frequently because we figured whatever we're going to find is going to be in Japan. And I remember the number of times I would go to like Comic Market or Comedia, which for those of you that don't know, is similar to Comic Market. It's also held a big site. It's held 4 times a year, at least the Tokyo version. There's actual regional ones as well. There's ones in
so that's why there's so many.
Yeah, there's one Niigata, Nagoya, Osaka. I think there's one in Hokkaido somewhere. Probably the Sapporo one. But,
wow.
They're for originals, all original content. It's also a place where budding manga artists would go because much like people in the West, in the U.S. that is, would go to San Diego Comic-Con for portfolio reviews, a lot of the editors from the major publications in Japan, of course, a lot of them are Tokyo as well, they go to Comedia every year to do portfolio reviews. So it's a very important place for a lot of people that want to break into that industry. A very fascinating thing.
Cool.
But I still remember I had a very good friend of mine who I've known for years. Randy, you may remember him too. A Hamoto Ryusuke goes by the handle Ryumoto.
Ryu-san.
New York. Yeah, Ryu-san. I haven't seen him in a while. He's a good
Neither
guy.
have I. He hasn't been to New York in a while.
Yeah, you should go visit again. Well, maybe San Diego too. But yeah. I remember talking to him during that time when we first got started. I was like, oh yeah, I don't work my other job anymore, but we started a game company, or actually we started a company. I didn't get to the game part. It's like, oh, if you're interested in like us, local, like translating your dojin and like selling overseas, let us know. It'd be cool. Sound guy says, oh, cool, good luck with that and everything else. And I remember just, didn't really talk much about it after that, but a couple years down the line, after we really kind of start hitting our stride, excuse me, I met up with them again at Comic Market, and I was kind of telling him about, actually, I don't think I even got to the part telling him how we've been doing. He kind of was like, yeah, I've been hearing about the stuff you guys have been doing. I just want to let you know that I actually thought this was kind of like some sort of a scam, and I kind of felt bad thinking like that, so sorry. And we all kind of just had a sheepish laugh over it. I thought that was...
I can totally see him saying that.
Yeah, it's kind of like, oh, well, I'm appreciative that you told me and apologized to me. That's understandable. And those kind of situations, because he was not the only one. There were others. They're just like, oh, sorry, Chris, I didn't think you were actually serious, so good job. I'm like, thanks, guys.
Well, hey, I mean, plenty of people are always like, hey, I've got a business idea and nothing happens out of it, so this won't be the first time.
Yeah, well, that's why I got to tell people, anybody out there that has, these kind of hopes and aspirations, if at first you don't succeed, try again, as they say. And I do firmly believe that. Execution. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we're at 38 minutes. Wow. So, yeah, I think we can call it a day here, but thank you very much for coming and chatting with me. I'm certain that I'm going to probably bully you into another thing sometime in the future. Certainly not next month, but I'll figure out something else that I want you to talk about, and I'll drag you in someday.
Sounds good. It was Randy, thank you very much for having me on. It was absolutely my pleasure.